Story 1. I live in a mid-sized Wyoming town since it's not as difficult to own a sizable plot of property here as it can be in most other states. Though small, my house was comfortable enough for me to live alone in. In 2019, this occurred 4 years ago. It was springtime, and it had been raining nearly nonstop for the past month. On this particular Sunday, I had spent the day relaxing and watching TV at home after work. I was knocked on my door unexpectedly at around 7 or 6. I was shocked to discover it was just a random guy, not the mailman or anything, when I answered the door after I could hardly hear it over the rain. Given how far out of the way it was highly unusual for someone to walk all the way out onto my property without warning. "How can I help you?" I stated. The man, who appeared to be in his late 20s, explained that he had been camping in the surrounding woods when he got into some difficulties and needed a place to remain the night. If he wasn't lying about where my house was, it would make sense for him to show up at my door, as I was the closest position within the woods by at least 5 or 6 miles. I felt even more sorry for him because it was pouring out, but it didn't lessen the risk of letting a stranger into my house. I suggested calling him to arrange a trip into town, but the man turned me down. The man simply said he couldn't stay here and left. I observed him travel a little distance on the dirt road before turning and heading into the trees. Even though that was strange, I didn't think about it for more than a few minutes before I started watching TV again. I didn't check the time too often, but I noticed an orange glare coming from the window by my backyard deep into the night, which had to have been at least 2 hours later. I stood up and slid the curtain aside. I could see a campfire in the center of the woods outside my house through the rain and fog. It was little and flickering in the pouring rain beneath a big tree. There was the outline of a figure standing next to it, clutching something. But whether he was facing my house or the woods, I couldn't tell. In a few period, I shut the drapes and grabbed my phone, alerting the authorities about this individual outside my residence. I wanted them out of my house before I went to bed, even though I knew it would take them nearly an hour to arrive. Whoever was out there wasn't hurting me. I checked the window once again when I hung up with the cop. The figure was gone, though the fire was still glowing softly. Then I heard footsteps approaching the residence. Before he turned the corner and proceeded to the front door, I saw him walking, past the other window holding the hunting weapon. After he pounded on it several times, it became silent. I took my self-defense pistol out of the closet in the hallway and crouched behind the wall as I tried to make sense of what had happened. He struck the door once more, and I could tell that he was using the stock of his rifle because he almost broke a panel out of the door. Right now, all I could think was that I needed to attempt to talk him out of it before it got to the point where one of us would have to die. With a sudden deafening blast that echoed throughout the house, I shot around to the edge of the doorframe. When my hearing returned, there were no footsteps or shouts, just the sound of the rain falling. After listening for 5 minutes with no noise, I worked up the enough to use the peephole to look outside. I saw an empty porch and distinct footsteps leaving the house. It seems that he dashed for the shot in the few seconds that I was silent. After a thorough check, the police discovered several odd details. They discovered a duffel bag near the campfire, which showed signs of having been hidden there and possibly dug up a few hours prior to the attack. They informed me that it was probably a premeditated burglary kit, or even a murder kit, meant to be dug up and used at a later time. This indicates that whomever assaulted me had planned it and had visited my residence in the exact same location before that evening. It is unknown why he attacked me in particular, and our understanding of who he is and where he is at this time is still no closer to completion than it was 4 years ago. Even though I currently reside in the same home, I worry about his potential return every day. Story 2. I was living in the most affordable part of my city at the age of 22, in a very little one-bedroom home. On a Friday evening, I went online to play games with some of my pals after work. The night was ideal for staying up late because there was a lot of rain outside and there was no job or school the next day. We probably performed for 2 hours before I had to put things on hold for a little while due to an unexpected sound. There seemed to be a thump that came from upstairs. I went up to check since my first thought was that the rain might have caused a leak in the roof. I rushed back downstairs and rejoined my companions online since the only rooms upstairs were the half bathroom and a single bedroom, and neither of them showed any indications of leaks. Since everyone else had gone to bed, I stayed on for a while and only left around 2 in the morning. I turned everything off, grabbed some food, and settled down to watch YouTube on my phone while eating. After 10 minutes, there was another thump. Once more, it came from upstairs, but this time, the sound was so muted that it almost seemed like it was coming from the roof. Even though I looked in my bedroom and the upstairs bathroom even further, nothing seemed to be the source of the noise. It vibrated through the walls like something really hitting the house, so I knew it wasn't thunder either. I looked about for 5 minutes, but I was so determined to find out that I put on my shoes and stepped outside into the rain to see if something more conspicuous might be seen. I didn't see anything noteworthy at first, but then I observed a tree branch approaching my house's side. Though it was a good 3 or 4 feet away from the siding, the branch was enormous and solid, and it wasn't swaying all that much even in the rain. It didn't seem possible that it would make it to the side and collide with the house's side. Looking at it, though, I saw that the tree kind of obscured a tiny window on the house. It had to be an attic because it was higher than the window in my bedroom. This house has an attic? I never knew that. It didn't appear like there would be place for a hatch, as there was no discernible opening and the roof didn't slope steeply. The first indication that there was an attic that I had ever seen was this hidden window. I entered with an even greater sense of curiosity than before, and began looking for this hatch that I had to have. Someplace. I eventually located it in my bedroom closet, albeit it took a minute. With the exception of a few minor openings, the ceiling blended in nicely, making it modest and smooth. I got up on top of a box and dragged it down, letting go of the opening and a rusted ladder. A terrible scent reached me instantly, and then there was a second thump sound coming from below. The attic was quite small, maybe 2 feet tall, as far as I could determine. After carefully climbing up, I peered into this small area, which was essentially a large black tunnel. At the end, at the window, I could see a figure that was crouched down and staring directly at me. I nearly went down the ladder in an attempt to flee. As I grabbed my phone and left the home to contact 911 from my driveway, I heard them shuffle around. When the police arrived, the man, who was really a homeless person, was taken into custody. It seems that he scaled the tree to reach the window and gained entry, remaining there unnoticed for at least a week. It was almost too ridiculous to be true. Soon afterward, I moved out, and ever since then I've inspected the attics of every house I've lived in. But the one thing that has stuck with me is the picture of that man, on his hands and knees, peering at me with eyes that looked like they were filled with both fury and dread, at the end of the attic. Story 3. I was the overnight manager of a retail business when I was in my mid-20s. It was a small place, and the only reason I was considered a manager was because I would be the only one working through the night, so my responsibilities included stock checks, shelf stocking, and occasionally receiving shipments of orders. I had not experienced any significant events up until this point, and I was really happy with my employment and never found myself detesting the work. As I began my shift on a weekday night, a storm was just beginning to build. In the first hour of our visit, the rain had increased and the wind was generating a lot more noise as it pounded the building. For the first 2 hours, I spent my time filling the shelves in an effort to finish the labor-intensive chores first. But as I was walking down the aisle, I heard a thud echoing through the structure. The sound seemed to originate from the rear of the establishment, specifically the warehouse area housing our delivery bay. As I approached, I noticed the sturdy metal rear entrance that truck drivers once used to enter the vehicle to make deliveries. The more I thought about it, the more I convinced myself that the sound at the store was like a bang, like a driver trying to deliver something, even though none were supposed to happen tonight. I saw wind and freezing rain on my face as soon as I opened the door. After taking a quick glance down at the cargo bay and realizing there were no trucks there, I shut the door and dried myself off. I thought the noisy was either the structure is shifting slightly due to the wind or possibly some odd thunder that I had not heard previously. As I made my way back to the Isley, I worked for an additional hour before having a lunch break in the back office, where I think I spent about 15 minutes before leaving. However, while I was moving around the store, I had the odd impression that everything had stopped save for the sound of the rain tapping on the roof. I got shivers from it, and when I got to the end of the aisle, I saw something that nearly stopped my heart. Halfway down the aisle, just next to my cart, was a row of wet shoe prints. Without thinking, I approached it and attempted to determine how this could possibly be happening. I trailed after them all the way to the front of the shop, where I was horrified to discover that they had wandered the entire space and that there were so many dripping prints that I could not follow them. I hurried back to the office, shut myself in, and bided my time until the cops arrived. My fear only increased while I sat there because I was unable to see beyond the office door and could not hear anything else, due to the loud rain falling on the building. The operator who had put me on hold returned to the phone after 10 minutes and informed me that the police were outside the building. I hurriedly stood up and opened the door, only to find another pair of wet shoe prints next to mine that led directly to the office I was in. I dashed to the front, opening the door for the cops. They searched the store, but they couldn't find anyone. Soon later, we watched security footage that showed us a man in a dark jacket entering the premises through an unlocked side entrance. He saw me right away and hid until I went on break, at which point he started to wander aimlessly. He simply strolled down the aisles and peered at the shelves. He didn't steal or break anything. The most terrifying and unsettling aspect of the experience was when I went into the office to wait for the cops. The man approached and waited for several minutes outside the office door, staring at the doorknob as though he was waiting for me to emerge. Fortunately, a few minutes later, he made the decision to leave and left the business. After then, no additional footage of him was shown. The man never returned, and from what I've been told, he was never located. I have no idea what he was doing that night, and I probably won't get over this unsettling mystery for the rest of my life.